Hello and welcome. I'm Sagar Gupta from ETV Bharat. G20 is the leading international forum for economic and political cooperation. On 30th November and 1st December, world leaders will visit Buenos Aires, that's Argentina's capital. Our Prime Minister Narinder Modi shall also attend the summit with a focus on fair and sustainable development. I'm joined by the highest representative of Argentina in India, Mr. Daniel Choburu. Ambassador, welcome to our program. And let me ask you straight away, please share your views about the agenda and priorities of 2018's G20.
Thank you so much. I think it's very timely because in a few days the summit is going to take place. I believe that you made a reference to the theme. In the reference you made, there is something that it's very important to underline, which is building consensus. This is the complete theme of the conference, building consensus for a fair and sustainable development. As the main instrument for the global partnership and the global governance of the world nowadays, you need to have consensus on the main issues so as to be possible for that consensus to go into specific measures. And that's one of the things that we want to also underline, which is that we are foreseeing a summit in which we can have a communique for the summit, action-oriented. So those actions can be taken to place by not only the international organizations that are in place, but also by the governments that constitutes the G20 themselves. For the development of this agenda, Argentina established three main pillars, which were the basis for the discussions during this whole year of the Argentinian presidency. And those are related to job creation, infrastructure for development, and food security. So around those three main pillars, and with one that cuts across all of them, which is the question of gender, we have been able to develop the, up till now, almost consensus in a lot of these issues. I said up till now because I think that it's very important to get to the summit and allow the leaders to discuss freely on things that they think are the main issues of today. It's not a question of them discussing a pre-established agenda, because that it's not what we expect. We expect them to have a free and in-depth discussion of what's going on today around very many issues. So that will be the last part of this consensus building process, so as to have, for us it would be very important to have these as the conclusion of what is our presidency of the G20.
You talked about the agendas. How important is G20 for Argentina and India in particular? How can both nations cover mutual interests through this multilateral forum?
Well, you know that Argentina and India have a very long story of political understanding and politically sharing values and ideas in the multilateral fora. We've been working together for more than 70 years, although officially we are celebrating next year the 70th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between the two countries. But that's not as far as we can mention work together between the two countries.
Right.
So I think that it's a good opportunity for both countries, because what we are very, very much convinced is that the G20 and the countries that are invited to participate in the summit this year constitute nowadays a better reflection, or the best reflection, of the world and the balance of power of today.
We know that Argentina is the first South American country to be hosting G20. So how would South America be gaining prominence through the summit?
Well, I don't know if I can say that it's going to be gaining prominence. I think that this will demonstrate the capabilities that we have in the region to undertake a commitment as important as a presidency of a group of like G20. These will strengthen not only Latin America or the region itself or South America, but it will also enhance and strengthen the participation of developing countries, given their views in these very important issues for the world order.
G20 is considered to be an apt platform to discuss economics, to discuss growth and development. So while trade between, let's say, China and countries in Latin America and Caribbean was 244 US billion till 2017, and trade and investment between India and Latin America Caribbean is only 35 billion US dollars in 2017-18. So what is the hindrance that is coming in a way, especially while dealing in trade with respect to India?
Well, I think that that shows a little bit a different strategy between the two countries. India and China are two very important countries in this region. They have a very strong position. They are two of the most important economies in the world. But the way they are facing their relationship with the rest of the world is completely different. In that regard, I believe that the main question there is that China is a much more open market than the Indian market is. India is much more concentrated in what is called the program Make in India, so as to increase jobs in India, and not open as China is to the incorporation of products from elsewhere.
Only 90% of Argentina's exports to India comprises only soya oil. So do you think that we need to diversify this trade basket? What all can Argentina export to India, and how can this import-export be improved when we talk about bilateral relations between India and Argentina?
Well, I'm convinced that we have with India a very strong relation, but this relation is much more based on political issues and on values. And we have shared these, you said, we are two democracies, we are for the rule of law, we do abide by a fair trade international system. So we share the values. What we have not been able to do till now is to develop a trade relation that goes up to the possibilities that both countries have. We think that there is a lot of potential to be developed yet. And as you said, for us it's very important the trade that we have with India, but it's based in only one product. So what we are working very hard from the embassy and from the government, of course, is to diversify this bilateral trade agenda. We think that, and this is linked to your previous question, we think that we need to improve the quality of our trade relations. And one way of doing that is incorporating more and more value to the exchange that we have. And in this regard, the high-tech sectors are one of the most important sectors that we can develop. It's not only radars, it's nuclear energy, it's new and traditional sources of energy, radars, as I said, satellites. There is in the area of defense a lot of things that can be done, even the development of these elements like planes, or there are a lot of things that we can do together, incorporating more technology, incorporating more value to make our relationship much more strategic than it is now. Because till now we in our case we have been just exchanging natural resources. Or, in fact, it's an oil, it's edible oil, which is the first process that you give to those natural resources. So we think that we have to sophisticate the kind of balance, of trade balance that we have, and make it really oriented much more to a strategic relationship as the one we deserve between the two countries.
Yeah, one of the goals in the Sustainable Development Goals is food security, which is also going to be emphasized upon in the summit. So please tell us how we as both countries can work towards achieving the goal.
Well, I think that the main agenda that we have to develop between the two countries comprises two things. One is energy security, that I already mentioned, the possibilities that we have in that area. And the second one is food security. Those two are the main goals of the Indian government. And for us, they are two very important areas in which we think that we have all the possibilities of cooperating with India and working together towards the achievement by the government of India of these objectives. In relation to food security itself, there are two main areas in which we want to work together with India and that we are convinced that we can do it. One is in the question of enhancing productivity, and the other one is in what it's called the post-harvest management, and that means on basically the questions of storage.
Ambassador, as a diplomat, I have to ask you that cryptocurrency has become a major threat. How bigger the threat is for South America and India and to the world economy at large?
Well, you know, I may tell you two things there. Mainly that this issue was put in the agenda and was accepted by Argentina, so it was very much discussed in the fora of the ministers of finance and the presidents of the central banks, and particularly, and it's very well described in the communique of the ministers that was in the meeting that took place in last July. There are two issues here. One is that in the discussion of the issue itself, there is one principal area, which is the creation of regulation or not in this area. At this point in time, I can tell you that there has not been a consensus on the need of creating these new regulations. Although it is recognized that the cryptocurrencies have a very sensible or touch very sensible areas, like the transparency of the market, like the rights and, of the consumers and the investors, like money laundering, like financing of terrorism, so there are a lot of issues involved in this cryptocurrency, but not yet an agreement on the need to regulate that market. The other issue is that for the ministers themselves, cryptocurrencies have not been identified as a threat. Yes, it is a sensible area, and yes, we have to keep an eye on them, but not yet as a threat for the interpretation of the minister.